Hey guys, what's going on? Jebb here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about crypto technical analysis. We're going to be asking the question, does it actually work? Because technical analysis is a very powerful tool when it comes to cryptocurrencies, but it does have its limitations. Cryptocurrency technical analysis, especially on smaller coins, has very large limitations that you should be very familiar with when you're doing technical analysis so that you can get the better, broader picture of what you need to know when you're investing or trading in a cryptocurrency. Now, this question is brought to us by a fellow named Viforte in the Discord server. Feel free to join the Discord server if you want to ask me any questions. We have a great community going on there. I was just talking to a guy named Omen. Shout out to Omen. He was helping me with an Instagram post earlier. But Viforte asks, do you really think the technical analysis works for Bitcoin? I'm not sure anymore. That was such a good question. I told him I would make a video on it, and here it is, Viforte. Hopefully you enjoy this video. I think you're watching this. You probably are because you asked the question. And my answer was as following. I'm going to go ahead and read this, and then I'm going to break it down in parts because it is kind of complicated. I answered, the efficacy of any form of technical analysis is greater when outside unpredictable forces such as news events or external economic conditions play a little as role as possible on that market. That being said, as this is the real world and news events, unforeseen or otherwise, do play a role in markets, TA is inherently limited by the fact that it relies purely on what has already happened in markets and does not inherently take into account what may happen in the future that will affect the price action. In short, TA is most effective when the market is being driven by traders that are only trading based off of the technical analysis and not news, hype, etc. Now, there's a lot to unpack there. The first thing I want to go over is that technical analysis is based on what has already happened. This is what I talked about here. Technical analysis is, of course, based on what has already happened. Where did I say this? TA is inherently limited by the fact that it relies purely on what has already happened in markets. So if we come to the Bitcoin market, then we can see this pretty clearly. Bitcoin technical analysis is going to be limited to what has already happened in the market. Of course, you can't do technical analysis on market conditions that straight up haven't happened yet. So when we're doing technical analysis on Bitcoin, for example, if we come in here to the hour chart, we can see where I drew a little consolidation pattern here. Bitcoin is kind of falling off a cliff right now. I just made a Instagram post about that. If you guys want to go if you guys want to follow me on Instagram, you should. The link's in the description. But for example, an example of technical analysis where it's working is this consolidation pattern I drew a few days ago back here in the end of April. As we can see, we had a downtrend and an uptrend that formed, came together over here, and they broke out of it, and we ran up to $10,000. That's an example of technical analysis happening. But if we have the chart like right here, then we can't really draw that yet because the rest of the market hasn't matured enough for us to build this out yet. So technical analysis is inherently limited by the fact that it relies purely on things that have already happened in that market. Now, before we continue, I want to show you some examples of where technical analysis has worked, and then I'm going to jump into some examples where technical analysis has not worked and where certain things happened in markets that were unforeseen and could not have been predicted by technical analysis, so that you guys get a good picture of what can be predicted and what cannot be predicted via technical analysis. The first thing I want to talk about is the dip from, well, it's not really a dip, it's more of a crash from $20,000 all the way down to $6,000. Now, my chart is acting up. Now, we're all familiar with this crash, I'm sure. We crashed all the way down from $12,000 to $6,000 very quickly. Now, I talked about this in yesterday's video, which incidentally I recorded about an hour ago. I talked about this in yesterday's video where you could pretty easily have predicted $6,000 as a bottom. Let me get RSI back up here so that I can show you that. Now, $6,000 was a pretty obvious bottom, and the reason that it was a pretty obvious bottom is because normally markets trade around very big even numbers, and $6,000 has 3 zeros in it. It's a pretty big number, so that was a pretty easy way that we could predict that happening. If we come out here to the day chart on RSI, we also got overextended on RSI when we were sitting here around $6,000. As you can see, we zoom in a little bit, that the RSI came here below 30, got down in the 25 to 27 range down here. When RSI gets that low, that means that's buying time. That's when you want to start buying markets. So RSI was telling us that $6,000 was the bottom, and also we had an uptrend to contend with as well. So we had an uptrend that formed down here at 1800, had a set point at 3000, or a pivot point at 1800, a set point at 3000, and then it also lined up perfectly with 6,000. So 6,000 was a very easy bottom to call here. Also, this second top that formed this double top around 12,000 was also pretty easy to call, and I'll show you exactly why. If we zoom out here on the hour chart, then we'll be able to see that. Let's go ahead and zoom out. My computer's being slow. I'm sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. Come on. Now, 12,000 was pretty easy to predict for a couple of reasons. First of all, since we're still kind of in a bear market, we can predict, it's more likely that this market here was going to top out just because there wasn't a lot of exuberance in the market. We were certainly in a little miniature bull run here, but $12,000, it was very, very possible for the market to top out here, and in fact, it did. Another reason that we could call 12,000 as the top here is because if we go on the logarithm scale, I'll go ahead and show you that actually. If we go on the log scale, then that was also a touch on the downtrend on the log scale. Let me zoom out here so I can actually get a hold of that trend line and show you what I mean. There's a downtrend that set that second top as a level of resistance. If we come here and we draw a trend line right here, then we can see that there's a trend line with a pivot point here, a set point here, and then that also gives resistance right here. So we had the potential to set a double top. We had around 12,000 as a somewhat of a big even, and we also had resistance on this trend line on the log scale. So it was pretty easy to predict that that would be, or it was easy to consider that as a possibility that that would be a level of resistance and that we might not get through that. So those are a couple of instances where Bitcoin technical analysis has actually been effective. Let's talk about some places where technical analysis has not been so effective. Now, before I get into that, the first thing I want to talk about is that technical analysis is more effective on the larger projects, the larger cryptocurrencies, because the larger cryptocurrencies are not as susceptible to news events. Smaller ones like ShipChain here are. ShipChain is ranked 510 by market capitalization. It's under $10 million in market capitalization. And as you can see, it's down 43.12% on the day. I'm recording this on the 23rd. You should be seeing this on the 24th. But a couple days before I recorded this, they got a cease and desist order from South Carolina. Now, I haven't looked into this too much. I'm just using this as an example. They got a cease and desist order from South Carolina's Attorney General office for violating the state's security status. Now, if you get a cease and desist order in your cryptocurrency from a state in one country on Earth, that shouldn't drop you 40%. That's not a good thing that's not a good sign for the cryptocurrency. But if you were doing cryptocurrency technical analysis on ShipChain right here, you're just tootling along saying, okay, ShipChain's trading right here around 10, 11, 12 cents. I'm going to do some technical analysis on this and say, okay, well, I think it's going to go up to 13 or 14 cents. And then this unforeseen news that you had no way of knowing was coming comes in, and it drops 50% from 10 or 11 cents all the way down here to 6 and 5 cents. You would not have been able to predict that. Another example of this is BitConnect. BitConnect, I don't remember what BitConnect was worth before it went under, but before it was finally unveiled that it was indeed a scam, it was trading like $200-300, I think, and within mere hours, it had gone down to like $1 or $2. Technical analysis on that chart would not have shown you that it was about to crash like 98%. So that's the limitation of technical analysis. Technical analysis is only as effective as the market that you were doing the technical analysis on. So with cryptocurrencies, when you're looking back at the market, you can, let's get off the log scale here. When you're looking back at the market, technical analysis is only going to be as effective based on, it's going to be most effective when the vast majority of traders are trading based on technical analysis and not on news and hype. Now that's why this massive run up here in 2018, or the late 2017, excuse me, was kind of hard to do technical analysis on because so much of this run was just people buying in on hype. Like so many people were making, so many people in the mainstream media were talking about Bitcoin. There was so much hype around Bitcoin that it was a very, very, very bullish market that was unsustainable. Technical analysis, you could do technical analysis on this, but it was hard to do. An example of where technical analysis also worked is 20,000. That's a very big even, and we've topped out at 20,000. That would be an instance where 20,000 worked. 5,000 down here was a level of resistance. That would be another example where technical analysis worked. So the vast majority of times it is effective, but it's most effective when the news is quiet and when the hype is low. And that's why this bull run, it was a little bit harder to do technical analysis here because Bitcoin really should have topped out around $10,000 here, but it ran all the way to 20,000 because of external forces. So I hope you guys understand that. I hope that answered Viforte's question pretty well. He says, thank you, it makes sense for my explanation here. I certainly hope that did make sense. And one last thing that I want to mention is that technical analysis is more effective when you're using very widely used technical indicators. Now, if you're using technical indicators that 5 traders that have 10 Bitcoin in total are using, that technical analysis isn't going to be very, very accurate. But if you're using something like RSI, which the vast majority of traders look at when they're making their trades, it's going to be more effective because more people use it and more people are making trades based on it. So when you're just getting into technical analysis, unless you really know what you're doing, I'd say stick to very, very well adopted types of technical analysis, that being like RSI, Fibonacci levels, the basics of support and resistance lines, things like that, things that are widely available. If you look up technical analysis technical analysis tools on YouTube, the things at the top videos they were talking about, try and stick to those until you get much better at it, until you really know what you're doing, because you're going to have the most success with those. More than likely, statistically, you're going to have more success with those because more people use those. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you tell me in comments if this video helped you out at all. And I want to thank each and every single one of you for watching. If you enjoyed the video and you want to ask me any questions like Viforte here, thank you very much for the question. I can always use help figuring out ideas for videos. Feel free to join the Discord server. You can ask me questions. You can post anything you want. We have an NSFW channel. I'm not going to click on that because this is a YouTube video, but we have a really good community going on here. If you guys are interested in joining, make sure you hit that link in the description. There's a link to that in the pinned comment down below. Also follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I'm much more active on both of those nowadays. But anyway, guys, I've said it a few times. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.